Hey everybody, welcome. Market Mondays. We are going to do another session here, and I'm glad you guys are tuning in because this one's actually really important. If you guys are on this Facebook page, it's because you're interested in the stock market. Okay, you're interested in learning about investing. Chances are a lot of you I know have started already. Some of you guys have never started. You're thinking about starting. You're maybe hearing some of the headlines. You're seeing what's going on in the news. We're having a record recovery right now in the stock market. Okay, what we've seen, we actually had a record drop in terms of speed, how quickly the market dropped over the last 2 months, really over this last quarter. It has never been done before. It's never happened that quickly. Well, it's also recovering at an extraordinary rate, especially amidst all the uncertainty. So it's been a very interesting time around Tradeway, teaching our students how to navigate this environment. And I can tell you it's very unique, which is very interesting for me as an instructor and as a trader in the markets every day, because some of the most valuable lessons that we can learn are front and center. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. So as you've probably seen in the title, do most traders wash out in the first year, or 80%, some say 90%. I've heard all these numbers before. We're going to talk about that because if you are interested in trading, it's not hard to see how important this would be for you to know. Hey, if most people try this and they don't do it, why should I bother? Or if most people try this and they fail, but some don't, then what are those doing that the others aren't doing? We could ask the question, is this statistic even true? And then if you are already trading, then you may want to know, hey, I'm already trading. I'm putting my hard-earned money at risk. I want to be in that second category. I don't want to be in that first category if it is true. So how do I do that? Okay, so that is what this session is going to be about. It is not going to cover everything, but I think it's going to cover the most important things that you need to know. Okay. So, do most traders wash out? Well, that depends on who you ask. But if you look at statistics online, brokers, okay, what is a broker? Brokers, if you don't know, these are essentially the bank accounts, if you want to simplify it, the bank accounts that allow us to buy and sell stocks, okay? Buy and sell stocks. So they have these, they're the one who brokers the transaction for us, okay? So they know who's buying and selling. They know who's winning. And primarily what we're talking about today, we're talking about what's called retail traders, okay? Retail traders. You and I are what Wall Street considers retail traders. We are not hedge funds. We are not investment banks, okay? We're not the major banks, all that kind. That is institutional trading. We are what's called retail traders. So when they refer to this 80, 90% losing in the first year, they're talking about retail traders. And that's an important distinction to make in this conversation because it's going to be statistics that specifically refer to that group of people. And of course, we are that group of people. So we're the ones who need to know this information. So let me just mix something up on my screen here. Okay. So one of the first things I want to say about this, number one, okay, why do most traders wash out in the first year? Is it true? First of all, it is. It is true. Okay. Again, depending on the source, you could get a slightly different statistic, but by and large, most people who start doing this, out of the whole pool of people who start doing this, they do not last the first year. They either lose their money, right? They lose all their money, or they quit. They just quit before they lose all their money. Okay. In either situation, obviously that doesn't get us to the goal that we started trading for in the first place. So how do we unravel that? Well, I want to say this first. Just because most people do it, I think there are some things that we're going to look at today that actually help frame why that's true. And let me just give you an example of what I mean. Anybody, in fact, with this thing, right? The phone, the iPhone, your Android, doesn't matter who you use, but with the mobile device, the smartphone now, it's easier than it's ever been to open a brokerage account. okay? It's extremely easy. You can open a brokerage account in the next 5 minutes. There's a very popular mobile broker now that wasn't around. I don't know the exact time this company started, but even in the last couple of years, it's extremely popular. You can open an account just like that, okay? Now, even before that, it wasn't as easy. You can still go online and you can open an account fairly easily. So just about anybody can open an account to trade stocks. Why is that important? Because the pool of people that we're measuring, the easier it is to get an account, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, are people losing money because the pool is bigger? Of course not. But that bigger pool means that there is a lot of people with a very low barrier to entry, meaning they don't need a skill set in order to be able to do this. So access to the tools, the ability to put their money at risk, wide open. Now, I will say it is a broker's job to some degree to assess the risk for you and me and give us an approval in our account based on that risk. So they won't just let me jump into a brokerage account and do absolutely anything I want to do. And that's a good thing, okay? But by and large, you can get a brokerage account and begin to trade stocks. And in some cases, you can begin to trade options even right away. Now, we're not going to go into options, but they have unique risks as well. They have unique benefits. But you can get approved in most cases to be able to trade stocks. So what does that mean? We've got a bigger pool of people. There's a low barrier to entry. And that means we can be attracted to investing, trading. We can be enamored with the potential of trading, which is potentially unlimited profits, right? There's always opportunities in the market. Work from anywhere. All you need is this thing, and this thing we're on right now, our computers that we've all been Zooming more than we ever have in our whole lives over the last 6 weeks. That's all you need. You can work from anywhere you want, right? So there's all kinds of things we could expand on there, but the potential here is very attractive, okay? So low barrier to entry, very attractive. You can get in. This is number one. It's very easy to become a trader because you have a trading account. Now, even with driving, just because you're in a car and you can drive that car doesn't mean we don't require you to get a license to drive it. We want people to know how to drive the car. Why? Because we want you to be safe. We want others to be safe. We don't want to damage property, etc. So what we want to do at Tradeway is teach you, if you want to get into this car, hey, isn't owning a car awesome? Okay, yes, it has its risks, but if you can get in this car and know what you're doing, you can actually get where you want to go faster than you would have being on foot. And that is the potential of trading. And we, of course, at Tradeway 100% believe in that. We would not have brought up most traders washing out in the first year if we didn't believe that there was something we could do. This would be like saying, we're just not going to drive anymore. Let's just walk. It's safer. Well, if we learn how to drive, if we have rules for the road, we can actually make this work and we can bring some order into the chaos. So when we've got a lot of people coming in and they have no skill set, all right, I'm going to get into this point more in a second. They have no skill set for trading, then they're putting their money at risk, but there is not necessarily any knowledge whatsoever about what to do, okay? Now, there is bits and pieces and things that are more available now online. You're watching this video right now, right? There's more of that stuff available, but not everybody avails themselves to that information, and they don't necessarily know, how do I take this information, comprehend it, make sense of it, and apply it in a way that works for me as a trader so that I can have more effective results. I was going to mention earlier, did not. There is a comment section if you guys want to throw a comment in there, anything you want to ask, or just even respond to what we're talking about today. Please go ahead, throw a comment in there. I would love to see you on there. Leo is asking, can I start trading with $100? Really, I'll say this quickly. You can actually start trading in terms of learning. Okay, and I said we're going to talk more about this. We will. with zero. Okay. You can virtual trade, and it's a good way to learn the mechanics of how to do this. But from there, can you start trading with $100? Absolutely. You can start risking with 100 or a portion of $100. It certainly, there are stocks. It's just a matter of you're going to have to choose stocks that you're going to be able to afford at $100. But in the beginning of trading, it's really about learning the skill set. Think of that student driver, same kind of a thing. You'll be able to practice with somebody, and then you can pick up the speed as you go. If people think that you need to have $10,000 to begin doing this right away, it's actually not true. You can start with as little as $100 in this example. So thanks for that question there, Leah. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. Remember, the first thing I said, we've got a bigger pool of people, a low barrier to entry. Lots of people are trading, but they don't know what they're doing. When they're putting their money at risk and they don't know what they're doing, what do you think is going to happen? The market itself has no emotions. The market itself has no character. It's not an entity in that way. Sometimes people like to talk about the market, especially traders, as though it does, but it is made up of other traders. Those other traders want to win. They want to win as much as you want to win. So if you're putting your money at risk and you don't really know what you're doing, if I don't know what I'm doing, then that money is at risk with people who are looking to take that money, in essence. So that is a huge driver as to why people wash out in the first year. But here's the good news. You don't have to do this with no skills. You say, well, what skills are you really talking about, Blair? Well, let's just go over a few really quickly, okay? Because there's lots of skills. But risk management. A lot of traders think profits. This is my goal, profits. I want to work on the beach, right? I want to buy whatever it is that you want to do with your trading. It's emotional and you're connected to those dollars, and that means profit. So when you trade, and forgive me, I say you, but I mean the trader, whatever trader we're talking about. And trust me, I've been on this journey as a trader myself, okay? So we think profits, but professional traders, whether they be those institutional or the ones who are being successful, right, that 20%, they're not thinking profits only. Absolutely, they are trading because they want to be profitable, but they are thinking risk. That's one of the skills. It's a huge revelation, right? It's a huge skill that needs to be adapted into our mindset and our skill set, and that is something that we focus on at Tradeway, because you need to manage your risk, okay? You need to manage your risk, and good traders are really good at managing risk. That's one skill. What's another skill? Good traders have an edge. They understand when an edge in the market is present and when an edge in the market is not present. I can tell you, and you guys know this if you've looked at the stock market, if you've looked at stock charts, the prices are always moving. Every time there is a price movement, we can perceive that as an opportunity to potentially make money. But if we don't have a way to see when a price movement it has an edge versus a time when it doesn't, then all the price movements are attractive to us emotionally, especially if we're thinking profit and not risk, okay? If we don't have a way of identifying when an edge is present versus not present, then all price movement is going to be attractive to us, especially if we're only thinking profit. I said it twice because I think it's really, really important. So you say, well, how do I identify an edge? Well, that's what a trading system does. That is part of what we teach and coach at Tradeway. How do you identify when an edge is present? And to define an edge, it's simply this. It's a setup. It's something that you identify in the market that says there's no guarantees, but the probabilities of one thing happen is higher than the probabilities of another thing happening, okay? That's all it is. When X, Y, and Z are present, the probabilities of this happening are higher than this happening. Now I see I have an edge and I can begin to take a trade. Most traders, many of those retail traders I just talked about that open an account, they get in, They either don't have an edge, or they don't have a very good one, or they have one, but they don't stick to it. And that's going to go to my next thing. They don't have the training and coaching that they need. Okay. And I'm going to give you one free tip that you can do on your own that will help you in your trading. It'll help this process, but they don't have the coaching and the training that they need to manage themselves emotionally. We can't expect that the market is going to behave the way we want it to. We can't expect that the market is going to be consistent the way we want it to. The only thing we can control is whether or not we are going to behave the way we want, whether or not we are going to be consistent the way that we want. That I can control, but that can sometimes be challenging. It can be hard to do. And that's a process that we focus on here to help people. Because if you get caught up in some of the pitfalls that happen when I'm not consistent, remember the example I just gave. I've identified an edge is present. That's a good time to trade. Oh, it's not present right now though, but geez, I just really want to make some money. I really want to be successful. I really want to make back some money I lost earlier. I heard this really great news item and that just really makes me want to trade. Oh, this friend of mine told me about this amazing profit he made and that just makes me want to get in there today. All kinds of things come up. And they mean we trade when that edge is not present. And that can mean that we lose a lot more than we ever had to, okay? So these are some of the pitfalls. Let's get into a little bit more specific on some of those pitfalls. Like I mentioned the bigger picture of managing risk, okay? But what does that specifically look like? Okay, going into a trade, okay, and knowing before you get in the trade, how much am I willing to risk? How much risk can I accept? Now, this is deeper because a lot of times I think traders think that they've accepted the risk because they're willing to trade, which we perceive to be risky. But just because you're willing to do a risky activity doesn't mean you've actually accepted the risk of that activity. Okay, so what am I saying? I'm saying, by and large, a lot of especially new traders will get into the markets and they have not even defined what kind of risk they're okay with. So what happens when there's too much risk? I feel a lot of emotions. Emotions for the trader, for those of you who are very keen on this, I would say write this down. Emotions, you can never get rid of them totally, but emotions must be managed well to be a successful trader. Emotions must be managed well to be a successful trader. Okay? And if we're going to manage emotions well, then we need to understand what can I risk and what can I not. So one of the things we work with Tradeway students on is how do I define the most that I'm going to lose in this trade? And we teach you a simple tool that you can use in the stock market that will get you out of a trade once you've hit that point. Once you've hit the point that you don't want any more losses, it will kick you out of the trade. And that means before you go in, you can assess how much am I willing to trade, how much am I willing to risk to see if this is going to work. Now, this is really basic stuff, and we expand on this concept, but think about this. Let's get back to the main point here for a second. Do most new traders wash out in the first year or lose 80, 90%, or 80 or 90% of them wash out? And the answer we said is yes, it is true, okay? But again, part of the reason is we're going in and we're taking massive risk, okay? Massive risk. We're not limiting losses, taking small winners. Okay, let me just paint this picture for you for a sec. Let's say we do 4 trades, okay? Some of you have had this experience. Let's say we do 4 trades. The first 3 of them, okay, you did not win. You took an expense. Now, it could have been a small expense, but we weren't defining our risk. We weren't limiting our losses. So We took pretty large losses on those 3, and we just started trading. And now we're feeling a ton of negative emotions from that because we want to win. But we took those 3 losses. Now we do a 4th trade and we get a win. Here's what I see happen. That 4th one is winning, but because we have so much built up from the previous 3 that were losses, as soon as we start to make some money, we just say, you know what? I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take it right off the table. And we take it off too soon. And what happens? We've got big losses. We've got small winners. Not only are the big losses going to hurt us, but now we're not even getting close to even because that fear is driving a smaller win. And now we're getting hit on both sides. How long are we going to last if that happens? Now, that scenario doesn't play out exactly that way for every trader. Every trader manifests, if I can put it that way, a little bit differently. But that's going to end up washing out very quickly. Now, this is my next point. People can come in, again, low barrier to entry, and they don't understand the mindsets and the emotions that come into trading. And so we get in that scenario I just talked about. Or greed runs wild. We take too much risk. Fear runs wild, okay? And it poisons the decisions we make. We don't necessarily understand how those things are affecting our trading, and it can cause us even, I'll tell you guys about revenge trading, okay? I am going to get back at that stock. Man, Chipotle Mexican Grill, geez, it took so much money from me. I'm just going to get it. I'm going to get it. And then you're in the trade and we're not stopping out. We're not getting out of the trade when we should, when we said we would. We defined our risk and we're just going to be stubborn. But the only person that's going to pay for that is us. And it sounds like, well, geez, Blair, that sounds kind of immature. I'm not so sure I would do that. I hope you wouldn't. I hope you wouldn't. But I can tell you that many, many traders find themselves getting caught in some of these traps. Okay, we don't start there. But if we don't understand the mindsets and how a skill set can control that mindset and those emotions, we can get caught in these traps pretty quickly. I'm going to give you something that you can use really easily that will help you control those emotions because I want you to be able to get that, okay? So here's one simple thing. I want you, every time you do a trade, if you're going to do a trade, I want you to have 3 numbers in mind. I want you to have 3 numbers in mind. Number 1 is, where am I going to get into this stock? Now, we haven't even talked about an edge yet, okay? Again, this assumes that you know what your edge is. And that, again, is part of what we teach here at TradeWay. This is the edge that we use in the market. But you want to know, when am I going to get into the trade? What point am I going to buy this stock? You want to know, where would I sell this stock? We're going to teach you all about that. And where would I, again, manage that risk, cut those losses? That way, if you know where I'm getting in, where I'm getting out, where I'm cutting losses before your money is at risk, it helps you greatly to make objective decisions when your money is already in the trade. Okay, it helps you manage the risk once you're already in the trade. So there's more to trading. I always say this to people. Trading is learning a trade. It's not just learning to trade, it's learning a trade. Because I believe that we can find a market edge, learn ourselves, learn to manage ourselves, and we can potentially be profitable from that process. But it is a process we need to go to. And by and large, I think a lot of retail traders do not go through that process, or they don't go through that process well because they don't have somebody showing them what needs to happen next. And that is very important to do. So for those who want to trade, in fact, I'll just say this really quick. I know that there are some who say that it's not even possible to trade. And again, by and large, they make that assessment because of statistics like we're talking about today. But is that really a fair assessment of what is possible? And if some are successful, is there not something that they are doing that the others are not doing that you and I could learn to do? Now, somebody might say, Well, maybe somebody's just more gifted at it. Okay, well, like anything, I could agree with you that maybe somebody's just more gifted at it, or they have a predisposition for it in some ways. That could be true of many things in life, but we could still go through the process and say that, maybe I won't learn something as fast as someone else. I could say honestly, there's other coaches here at Tradeway. There are certain skill sets in trading they may learn faster. They may have developed quicker than I did. Maybe I had to work through a process that was a little bit longer, but it wasn't about them. It was about where I wanted to go and whether or not I felt like I wanted to put in the time to get myself there, that I wanted to make certain changes, that I personally was feeling led by the Lord to make some of those changes, and that this was one of the ways I wanted to do it. So that process for me, even if it wasn't as fast, was still the process that I wanted to be in. Okay. So here's another one I want to say. It's very easy to overtrade. Okay. So this is the last thing I'm going to say. It actually doesn't take any skill whatsoever, because we've been talking about this the whole time. It actually doesn't take any skill whatsoever to put on a winning trade. So we talked about that big pool of people, right? And I'm glad, I'm glad lots of people are getting into trading stocks because it's a huge financial opportunity. It really is. It's very accessible. Brokerage fees are lower than they've ever been. In some cases, they're free now. Okay, so that's a good thing. But I can get that brokerage account, I can place a trade, and I can win. I can be profitable. I can make money. But I'm not even 100% sure if I had an edge present in that trade or not. Maybe it was news. Maybe it was what I thought, intuition, feeling, guts. Maybe it was hunch. Maybe it was gambling. I just threw money at the market and it worked. Maybe it works twice. In some cases, a string of winning trades can be put on by the new retail trader who does not have a skill set, doesn't know the edge, and doesn't understand what emotions and mindsets are at play so as to control them. And eventually what happens is a loss sets in and then another loss. But there is a sense that, well, I put on some trades, so I should be able to win. And so there is almost a false pretense there. There's a foundation that is shaky, and it drives the trader to continue to trade, but not knowing that that edge is not present. It's not conducive to long-term results, and thus they wash out. Okay, so is it true that most traders wash out in the first year? Yes, statistically it is true. But is it not true that you and I can learn to do what the 20% are doing? We can learn from people who are at where we want to be. Instead of going it alone and just giving it a shot because there's a low barrier to entry, we certainly can learn those things. And we're glad we can utilize that low barrier to entry, that low cost, and that amazing financial opportunity. But we have got to get ourselves the skill sets and the mindsets, because if we're going to put our money at risk, if we're going to steward the finances that God has given us, if we're going to plant seed in the ground, then we should learn a thing or two about seed time and harvest and weather patterns and so on, shouldn't we? Again, if we're going to drive that car, let's get a license. Let's get a license so we know what we're doing, okay? So that is the Market Monday today. I hope this blessed you guys. I want you guys to understand that it's my heart, it's our investment. I think that's an appropriate term here, to make you successful, to make you confident, to make you feel like you know what you're doing. And when you know that that edge is present, you can go ahead and execute a trade, and we can help you walk through that process. Stay posted right here on Facebook, Mondays, Wednesdays. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. We're going to do this every single week. You're going to get great content from us right here. We're going to have an all new topic every single time. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much for being